Not much of the basketball season left right now. We've probably got 3 or 4 games. At least that's my anticipation.
Well, at least three.
Well, at least three, but I'm not sure it's going to be more than that, or it won't be many more than that. I think Denver. Well, we'll talk about that, but I think Denver's en route to a championship. They're first, I guess. We'll talk about that. Paul Jones, Doug Smith are with us, and the other thing is the Raptors still looking for a head coach, and we'll see if that comes to fruition over the next few days.
Bobcat, you said that like Michael Buffer, and still champion of the world, and still looking for a coach.
Well, how long does it really take? I mean, I gather the word is he's interviewed everyone. I'm surprised he hasn't called me.
They went through a very extensive list. But
Shannon, how was your interview?
Well, I kept telling them I'd love to play the four corners, and it didn't really go over that well.
Smitty, how was your interview?
I wouldn't take the job because I wouldn't want to deal with guys like me every day.
I can understand that.
But it isn't about the right timeline. We always thought the first week of June or so would be the time they would hire a coach, and I presume it's going to be done by the middle of next week at the very latest.
And do you want to give me a name or two or three that you think is in the mix? Because I have no idea at this point.
I would love to, and I presume in the mix. And this is not I think there are probably 4 guys left in the mix. I think 3 of them are Steve Nash, Sergio Scariolo, and Jordi Fernandez. Who the fourth is, I don't know, and I'm not 1,000% sure on the first 3, but I'm 990% sure on them. But I don't know. They've held them really close to the vest.
It's interesting because I still maintain that who you hire will dictate some of your path. And maybe that's what they're trying to figure out now. Is this a team that we can kind of retool a little, get the right guy in, and we're a top 3 or 4? Or how much work do we need? Should we get a guy who's going to focus more on development, help us build? I mean, you saw what the Pistons did. Monty Williams, like 6 years, 72. The first report was 78. I think the last report I saw was 72. But they intend on having that guy for a while. They've said to these young guys, don't come and say to us anything about the coach. This guy's here for 6 years. So, I don't know if the Raptors will give a 6-year contract to a guy, but I still think some of what they're hashing out with winning and developing and the combination of both is going to impact the hire.
Yeah, but Monty Williams was already owed $20 million from Phoenix. He could have sat on the sidelines for 3 years and just cashed in tickets. And they needed to do something to sweeten the pot much deeper than what Phoenix was already paying him, right, Doug?
Yeah, they needed to go that deep to get a guy like Williams to coach that team, because that's not a very good team, and it won't be for a few years. And I don't know that Monty's a great coach. He had great success in Phoenix, well respected around the league, but I would be surprised if he spends the 6th season in Detroit. But I think they had to give him 6 years and 75 or whatever $1 million to get his name on a contract.
Well, I'll tell you, as I look at the Raptors head coaching situation, Steve Nash is in the mix, and Nash is I think you're right, and he's a very interesting guy. Forget that he's Canadian. If you look at his record as a head coach, it's pretty decent, and yet my sense is that he doesn't have the respect of the basketball community as a coach. What do you think?
I think the basketball community knows what kind of cesspool Brooklyn was, and he does have their respect.
Yeah.
I think the basketball people know that the Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden team was just not workable. It was not workable at any level. And that he was let go during that tenure there, I don't think surprised anybody in basketball. And I think a lot of people in basketball were saying, wow, thank God he got out of there. Because he's a good coach.
To agree with Doug, there are very few coaches that are good with quirky personalities and situations. Like you get into a situation like that and you're pulling your hair out. And I thought Steve remained is there anybody
he did remain calm?
A George Karl, but he remained calm and still got wins out of them. I mean, Durant was in and out of the lineup. Kyrie played when he wanted. James Harden was there thought he would sacrifice for the team. Then he said, okay, I'm done here. And he wanted out. And through it all, Steve just kind of, like he did as a point guard when he played, just kind of keep the car on the road and keep it going in the right direction. And unfortunately, he got sacrificed. But I think the basketball community will look at that situation and go, wow, first-year head coach in that situation, and he comes out with a winning record, and he's basically fired so the GM can kind of save his own skin.
How do you explain, though, the relationship or the lack of one, or whatever story it is, between he and Kevin Durant? I mean, because that was a strange few episodes, whether I didn't like the coach, I want the coach out, or I'm not going to. I mean, how do you explain that, Doug?
I think Kevin Durant felt bigger loyalty to Kyrie Irving than Steve Nash, and he was proved wrong in the end. I think for the Durant he's always been a go along to get along kind of guy. And I think in Brooklyn, he got so tied to Kyrie that he had to be seen on Kyrie's side. I think at the end, he realized, boy, I screwed up. I picked the wrong horse in this race. But during that time, he needed to be that kind of teammate to the guy he went there with.
Yeah, agreed. And
go ahead, Joe.
No, I agree. And I thought the capper to that, Doug, is when it all fell apart. And he said, what, a week before the trade deadline, I'm out of here. And here's where I want to go. Like, to me, that was the cherry on top with, okay, this is not working. Cards were misplayed. I want a new hand. I'm going to a new table to play cards. And they got him out of there and got him to Phoenix.
You know, the story of great players being great coaches, the list is pretty short. I think, Doug, the last time you were on, we talked about one guy, Larry Bird.
Yeah, Bird did a good job. I think Isaiah did a pretty good job for a little while. Pretty good, not great, but Larry Bird did a very good job. Magic Johnson was horrible.
So the challenge for Steve Nash in this market, I mean, let's face it, he's a hero here. But are we going to be swayed by having a Canadian hero as the coach of the Raptors?
The fans weren't swayed when they had another Canadian basketball hero as a coach of the Raptors.
Rihanna.
Yeah, but Jay, respectfully, you know, Jay was here. Steve's way up here.
Oh yeah, he's a two-time NBA MVP and a Hall of Famer. But yeah, he's absolutely. I don't know that. I'm not sure how that will play into it. I think it'll be an interesting story for the first couple of days, first couple of weeks. But then it becomes, how can you make this team better?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the team like? Like how we don't know we have no clue what the roster is going to look like in September. And I think that's going to be the story: is can he make whatever's on the team good enough to be competitive?
Well, you have to think that his strength would be, you know, as a point guard, because that's what he was, and that he would be, you know, he'd coach that way. He doesn't even have a point guard, really. I mean, he has Van Vliet, and we think Van Vliet probably will stay, don't you, Jones? You think he stays?
I mean, if you're looking at money and where he can get the most money, that makes the most sense. Yes.
So if they want him, they could have him, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Here's my thing though, Bobcat, and you make a good point about Steve being a point guard and coaching like that. Listen, we know in this present day and age in coaching, whether it's at the high school level, the AAU level, you know, the college, university level, it's about people. It's about how you manage people. I mean, you just look at the transfer portal in the U.S. Kids, I don't like it here. The coach isn't treating me right. I'm gone. I'm out of here. People don't even recruit anymore. And so you need those relationships. And I think Steve is really good at that. He was an excellent teammate. He was an awesome teammate. And I think that's something that would carry over into his coaching around, you know, team building and culture building and you know, those issues to create a cohesive team.
Now, the other guys are pretty interesting too. And I know we're focusing on Nash because his name's on the list and he's Canadian and he's Steve Nash, but a guy like Sergio Scariolo is a pretty interesting guy who's had, you know, he's one of the most successful international coaches in the history of the game. I think so. If you get a guy like that, how does he fit in where the roster's going, where the franchise is going? Non-North American coming to be a head coach, the first one ever it will be.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Jordi Fernandez in Sacramento, who's a really well-respected coach who's worked for a lot of great coaches. So the list is very impressive if those are the three. And again, Mazzai and Bobby have kept everything quiet. Agents have kept stuff quiet. It's been awful secretive. But if those are the three choices, I don't think there's a wrong one in the bunch.
Well, let me ask you this. We know that teaching is a part of college basketball. It's definitely a part of high school basketball. Is it a part of the NBA?
Yes.
Does your coach have to teach?
Yes.
No, your coach doesn't have to teach. Your coach has to hire coaches to teach.